Noon. Do I have a second?
Yes, I second.
Okay, Member Morrow,
Yes.
Member Searle,
Yes.
and Chairperson Coe.
Yes,
Okay, motion carries.
thank you. Marina, can you just ask Ken's sign over there? Is it there? Thank you. All right, Ken, we're all set. Now everyone knows who you are. Okay. Before we begin this meeting, is there any conflict of interest that we need to divulge this on any of these two applications? Jenny?
No.
No, for me?
No.
No, okay. So we will begin. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon. I guess it's afternoon, technically 1 minute, 1 minute afternoon. I'm Lisa Cove. I'm the chair of the Historic Preservation Board for the village. Thank you so much for being here today for this special meeting. We have 57 South Main Street person here or not here? Has anybody heard anything about this? That they were
Not me.
supposed
I
to
hadn't
come or
heard,
anything?
I hadn't heard confirmation until this morning.
I just know both the parties agreed to this meeting from the last time. It was noticed the same way. I reached out to them with reminders, so.
Okay, and you never heard anything back from them? Okay. All right, well, let's move forward and maybe they'll show up later. So we'll go to Heather Hurst Drive, 52 Heather Hurst Drive. Windows, come on up. Come on up, yes.
Hello.
Hi there, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. All right, so we have a window holdover and you want to give us a little feedback as to what happened since our last meeting?
Sure. I brought up that my neighbor at 37 Courtney Circle had windows replaced within the last year with Anderson Renewal. And they also have a post-war house like mine. And the board was unable to look that up in real time. It was getting late, so we had a meeting today so that information can be tracked down as precedent for replacing windows.
It's a few pages and I highlighted it.
That's the date, October 14, 2020. Thanks, Marina. Did you take a look at the minutes from your neighbor's presentation at all? Did you have a
I
chance to
haven't
look
looked at that minutes, but I spoke with my neighbor this morning about it,
Mhm.
and there's somebody from Anderson here who has that information, so we should be able to answer any questions about that.
And did you get that information? Ken, did you see the minutes from that last approval?
No, I haven't.
It appears from the minutes, and please confirm, Lisa, that the windows at that address were replaced without prior approval. And that my position at that time was that the windows were not compatible. And I voted no on the application. And my position at this point remains the same on the windows at 52 Heather Hurst. It's the position of the board at this time that before windows are replaced, an expert consultant should be retained to evaluate whether or not they are repairable. At our meeting on Monday, August 9th, I indicated that the repair contractors that we have on our new list are not ones that would necessarily be the right contractor for modern windows because the skill set is significantly different. And I suggested that G&G Window be contacted for pricing, but not evaluation. And Jeff Turner indicated that the village should in fact retain an expert consultant to give us an official evaluation on repairability. Is that Did I read your email correctly?
That would be my position. Our code requires repair rather than replacement. So the first issue is whether or not they can in fact be repaired.
So, oh, excuse me, I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay. So the Courtney Circle replacement was due to the fact that the windows were no longer there, are no longer available. The windows that were there were are no longer available on the market to put in if they are. And so the board was left with a next best option to try to put windows that, or allow windows that were most suitable from a architectural preservation point of view, meeting the time period and all the rest of it. So, I mean, these windows may not, in fact, be repairable. I don't know, but it would seem to me the board needs to answer that question since our code has that order.
Mhm.
Right.
And this would be a village expert, no cost to the applicant. And that really is what our code calls for.
Okay. So do you understand that what's going on? Do you understand like the whole process of where we are here? So maybe I can
Can
put it in
I just
perspective.
add one more thing?
Yes.
There's only 3 board members here today. You have a right to have a full board here to make the decision about how we proceed with this application. You know, Member Searle has already indicated her thoughts that these replacement windows would not be appropriate. So the simple math of the situation is that there are not, it doesn't sound to me now, she hasn't voted, she hasn't taken a position on the record, well, she has taken a position. But it doesn't look like you would get an approval today, so you are totally within your rights before the board takes one more step to have your application reviewed and acted on by a 5-member board. And we have, I don't know why Mr. Pollock is not here today, but I know Mr. Harrington has health concerns, but we do have an alternate, a very qualified alternate who sat on this board for years and years and years. And that would make a full 5-member board, and you would need only three of those members to vote in the affirmative for your application to be approved. So I want to point out that you have that opportunity.
So in other words, we can certainly vote and it would, depending on where we come on our vote, we do have a quorum, so we could make that decision with this board. However, we do have the prerogative to make all of us be in attendance in order to vote.
So you do have a quorum here
We
today?
do have a
We
quorum.
have a quorum. Three
Yes.
is a quorum. But it takes 3 members. It's not a majority of those present, just to be clear. It takes 3 members to do an approval. So I'm just telling you that Member Searle's statements on the record indicate that she does not feel that this is an appropriate window replacement. So I would speculate that when it comes to a vote, even if the other 2 members are in favor of this, that you would not get an approval.
And let me tell you the other thing too, is that there's a misunderstanding that everyone, not just you, has, is that because we did it with one person, we're going to do it with the other. We have never used that as a reason why we are going to approve an application. So that's just, I want to make sure you know that, because if I voted yes on this one, I could vote on no on yours. So it's all based on the vote, as you probably know. The circumstances are different because the windows were gone. And that makes a huge difference as to, where we go with this. We as a board have had so many window applications over the last 6 months that we have put together a process that we feel comfortable with, where we have found evaluators and we have found repair people that we feel very passionate about following that process for every month, so that we make sure that we're not haphazardly just putting new windows in. So therefore, the process that we put together, which is really only, we formulated this list 2 months ago, even though it's been in the making. The process has always been there.
Process.
Right, so we formulated this great list so that we could provide applicants with specialists that we felt and we vetted ourselves could be an appropriate way to get the windows evaluated. Prior to our list, we basically said you need to find somebody who can take a look at these windows and see if they're repairable.
Which we felt was unfair.
Right, which we didn't feel was unfair because, you know, we're making you do actually more work as per our recommendation.
So let me just correct one thing that Chairperson Cove said. Had this been exactly the same fact pattern as Heather's, then we would not be allowed or entitled to vote differently on the same fact pattern.
Oh, well, are you sure?
I am absolutely sure that if you are faced with
The exact same thing. So, okay, all right.
exact same
Thank you for
facts,
clarifying that. I was
then
not aware of
the
that.
precedent is set by this board. But this is not that case. There's different facts. And frankly, Courtney Circle is the exception, not the rule. The building inspector, code enforcement officer can't be everywhere in the village. Sometimes applications happen on the weekend and they're changed out without anybody knowing. But had that application changed, had been done on a week or a weekday, when he's on duty, it's very likely there would have been a stop work order placed on that job. And that person would be exactly in the same position you're in. So again, I don't know the status of your windows. And I want to point out again that to get to the point where we have the board retains an expert to look at your windows, that would be a majority decision. So if you got the other two members here and they looked at the facts and were persuaded that your application should be granted, none of that would happen. But again, it's a little bit of a delay.
Let me just make two statements. The previous application, in which I indicated that I did not support the application because the windows were not appropriate. Had the windows been evaluated by an expert and determined to be not repairable, my vote may have been different. But because that process was short-circuited and I had no information on the repairability of the windows that had been removed, the only item before me that I could vote on was what was put in. In your case, you have not removed the windows without authorization, without approval. We have an opportunity here for the village to provide an unbiased window repair expert to take a look at your windows. And then that individual will let us know whether or not they are repairable. If they're not repairable, then I would obviously be in favor of replacement. But my position is that I am going to abide by the village ordinance, which includes the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, as well as the village design guidelines, which require repair rather than replacement. But if repair is not possible, then replacement can be considered. So that's my position now. And
Chairperson Cove made this point last time.
I'm sorry.
Chairperson Cove made the point I'm about to make last time.
Okay.
But we're not talking about windows, if they were repairable and repaired, that they don't operate absolutely 100% as they were intended to operate. If there is any indication that these windows are only minimally repairable, I don't know what that word means, those words mean, but if they did not work in a way that your whole family could work those windows, as I remember there was a problem that only you seemed to be able to jig them up and down, then that's not a repairable window.
It's not a repairable window.
So then we would look at your application to replace a non-repairable window. And in that situation, I would tell you that Courtney Circle will come heavily into play and would be a reason that we have to think very carefully about any denial of this application.
Even though we recommend wood.
Right. Because wood, everything that was available to Courtney Circle is available to this applicant, and we would not be on firm legal ground for no reason, change how we're dealing with this applicant.
Yeah, my the house down the street burned 31 Courtney Circle,
Yep, I'm aware of
and
that.
my understanding that alternative materials are being put in those windows, not wood. So
But again, because they're not available anymore, they've been burned. That's the
right,
reason for
but I
that.
wouldn't think that I would be required to replace the windows with wood windows. That's what I'm saying.
I would think that we would have a very hard time asking you to do that. So really, this is the board following its ordinance, its law.
Right, so, okay, I understand, I mean, I'm pretty clear, I understand the situation. Honestly, the way you framed it to me last week was, would you please consider having somebody assess the repairability of your windows? That's phrased like a question, not like, you need to have an assessment of repairability before we can move forward. So if that's the standard, then, because I wasn't interested then, I'm not interested now, particularly in repairing the windows. I don't think that will do anything for the value of the house when it comes to resale. It's like fixing your car. I mean, I fixed these 80-year-old windows. I don't think that helps the value of my home. So I personally don't think that's a good investment. I understand the position, and it doesn't sound like the preference of the owner comes into play. If they're repairable, and that's what I must do, or not do anything. And the alternative, I don't have an alternative to replace the windows. That's what's being said. Okay.
So there's two questions here. Well, one is the fact that you're talking about the resale, the value of your home. As a preservation board, we don't take that under consideration. That's not our charge. We don't, unless they're
But
goes to a point.
homeowners do.
Right, but we don't. So we're not basing our decision on that. We never have, we never will. That's not our charge. So just try to I know it's hard to understand that, but we're not looking at this as a resale issue.
But you made a point at the last meeting that because of this board, property values are high in the village. And it was a point you made. And
Correct,
so
but it's not based on the-
I'm
right.
sensitive to that.
Right, but it's not based on the fact that we're taking historic homes and putting
Understood.
things in there. That's not the reason why
Understood.
our growth has maintained itself.
Understood.
Okay, all right, so that's one. The second piece is what you stated, that I have no option. So I'm gonna let you take that.
I would like to speak to the former as well.
Okay,
And that is any application, whether it's under the zoning code or under the preservation code, is owner blind, if you will. Easiest example is we have a handicapped owner who bought the house when they were handicapped. And now, for convenience, they want to put some kind of ramp in. Okay, that's maybe a bad example, but let's just say the ramp impinges on the side or front setback or in some way. That person doesn't automatically get that. You take a look at what the property means, what the property should have. not what the owner should have. And that's the way zoning and historic preservation is always worked. So you're right on the second point. The choices are the board, so it's not your choice, okay? And I don't mean it the way that sounds, the right way, just let me finish. It's the board's choice, okay? They have, does the board have a choice? This is not a, well, you're right, you make a great argument, and we're going to, in this case, ignore our statute and do something different. That's not a choice the board has. I mean, when you talk about choices, it's what are the board's options and what may they do legally? And our code, and often, like any other preservation code, that's part of the New York State preservation system, if you will, requires repair rather than replacement. And the theory behind that is that if you do that across the board, you are helping everyone's property values. So that you know that someone down on Main Street is going to be treated the same way that you're treated, and it brings the whole preservation district up. So the board, when you say there's no options, you're correct. The board doesn't have an option.
I'm not sure I agree that there's no discretion and that the board effectively has no power and they're merely bureaucrats reading a code. I mean, you had a different opinion than the rest of the board. I mean, clearly there's differences of opinion and interpretation of the code. So
actually you raise a very, very good point. This is not really a discretionary board. Okay, this board has a narrow set of approvability criteria, and they must operate within those narrow approvability criteria. So it's not like the Board of Trustees is an absolutely discretionary board. The planning board is not really that discretionary board. The zoning board of appeals is not that real, because they're operating within a very, not as narrow as this board though. This board has very narrow criteria, and the law, I hate to sound overly legal about it, but the law in every instance dealing with historic preservation really looks at this board as not a discretionary board.
And I do understand what you're saying. I mean, there's a very minute area of play because like you said, that we have voted differently, but we do have very structured abilities to guide our perspective or our way of looking at it.
I think there's been considerable heterogeneity in how the board has handled applications like mine over the years. I don't think it's a narrow straight path that people have navigated.
If you were able to give us the exact situation that you have, you haven't.
That doesn't
haven't.
happen. That doesn't
right,
happen.
well, there you go.
That isn't the nature of precedents and law, that
Oh,
you
yes.
have to have the
But that's what-
exact.
That's what we're talking about.
I don't perceive that to be how law is practiced, that the circumstances of this case match exactly the circumstances of precedent cases. I just don't think that's how law operates. I'm not a lawyer.
No, I agree. But what is true is that if you do have a factual case that is pretty closely in line with another one, then that is a precedential basis upon which you must operate.
Well, you were saying before it has to exactly match, and
Well,
that's sort of
an easier way to do it.
that's an impossible standard to meet. I don't know. Is there cases? Oh, yeah, sure.
My name is Mike Rover. I've had the opportunity to sit on the board several times before,
Mhm.
representing homeowners that we work with. And I have no legal advice here from my homeowner, because I'm not part of the law.
Mhm.
But I will bring up some points of interest that I would encourage Ken to reflect back on the whole minutes from previous meetings. I'll refer to. We had a homeowner in the village that I represented back in a couple of meetings in April and May at 37 East Jefferson Avenue. She was permitted to have our windows put in, and the reason it was given at the time was that it was a post-war home, and it did not have to follow the exact guidelines of homes that were perhaps built in the late 1800s or early 1900s. Those were words that we can, I think, pull out in minutes from the meeting. I also had the opportunity to observe many.
What was
other
that
things.
address, if you don't mind?
37.
37 East Jefferson Avenue, and I believe those meetings were virtual in the months of April and May of 2021.
I remember that. I remember
Yes.
the application.
And hold on one second before you go on, because I just want to have Ginny, would you just give him just there are post-war houses that do follow not very, just a little bit different, but they all do the same. So do you want to just quickly to say about the post-war, the way we view post-war
Well,
properties?
with windows in particular, it's understood that the materials of the windows that were manufactured post-war are not equal to the materials, when I'm speaking of wood, that were available before that time, due to mass production of homes, trees being farmed rather than harvested from forest, that type of thing. So the old growth, tight growth, harder wood was not available, generally speaking, for the mass production of houses that happened after the war when GIs came home, GI Bill, everybody wanting to have their own home. That's part of the cultural development of the United States in general, and that includes what happened here in the village of Pittsburgh.
So with that said, there's an understanding of that era, but there is a post-war area as well. So we try to be consistent. So it's not written in stone that we treat them differently than, but there's an understanding because of that. So I just want to give you a basis.
Well, it's not an understanding.
Well, I mean, appreciation
Design,
or,
it's design guidelines.
well, there's a statement,
Now,
but we still always say replace wood with wood. Okay.
perhaps the minutes of those meetings will speak for themselves as the review, but also as part of those meetings, I had the opportunity to observe other homeowners that I was not a party to. that were
Can I
going
just
to-
ask you real quick, did that homeowner have somebody to come out and evaluate the windows before they
I
replace
don't
them?
believe she was required to have.
She was not required to have an evaluation.
This
It was determined by the board
all
that
right.
she was not required to have an evaluation to see if the windows could be rebuilt. And that's what
That's
I
correct.
recall.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
I also
Remember
had the opportunity
We
to.
Okay, well, that's all right. We're going to have to pull up those minutes as well. Okay.
I also had the opportunity to observe other appointments that I was not a party to, here in cases that were being heard of other homeowners that wanted to do windows and doors. And in the same time frame in those virtual meetings, homeowners were expressing to the board that there is such a small market for the rebuilding of windows that the accessibility of people that do that and offer that as a service is so small that they were confronted with 2 years of waiting before someone could get to them to even begin their project, let alone go through the long period of time it would take to do that work. And I believe, and we'll let the record speak for itself, that the board considered that as well, I would just say criteria in making their decision for the homeowners for whether they had to wait or they could pursue windows in another direction. I would advise my homeowner that I'm working with now, Ken, to take a look at those timeframes that are being offered. And I think you're going to find that given the situation that we're well aware of in the home improvement business, that wait may be just as long, if not longer, than what other homeowners were looking at as well.
I would just like to say here that the composition of this board changes and the understanding and knowledge of the board changes, and as knowledge is increased and understanding of compliance and how to legally comply with our ordinance is always improving. This process of having an independent expert evaluate windows regarding their repairability is relatively new. And at the time, particularly with the East Jefferson Road application, we were in a position where you're right. We could not suggest appropriate window repair contractors. And we understood that some of the qualified window repair contractors that we knew of had
Long way.
long ways. So in an effort to improve the legal practice of the board, as well as come to a more reliable,
Option.
well, no, not arbitrary decision-making. What's the opposite of arbitrary in a legal framework, Jeff?
Are you really done?
The opposite of arbitrary. I mean,
Yeah, to come up with a consistent, how about a consistent method of dealing with the large number of window replacement applications that we're getting? We reviewed and revised our list of qualified window repair contractors, and we developed a list of qualified window repair evaluators. So now, separately. So now we are implementing this. I'm sorry you're in the middle of this change, but windows are one of the most clearly understood character defining features in any structure. And whether the structure is the very first house that was built in Pittsburgh or the house that was built most recently in Pittsburgh, we still have to maintain the same method regardless. And so, as I said, the composition of the board is changes, as well as the board's understanding of the legalities.
So
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say one more time, if it is determined by someone other than me, other than Steve, that your windows are not repairable, then I would have no problem at all. But as Jeff and Lisa have both stated, our ordinance is very clear that repair is always preferred to replacement. And I would suggest that this board entertain a motion to hire at the village's expense one of our evaluators to look at the windows and give us a professional opinion. Now, the other option that might be available, aside from, the windows are not functioning, if you are denied, there's always, and if financial considerations are involved, you have the opportunity to appeal on any decision on a hardship basis, correct, Jeff?
Yeah, I don't think hardship would come into play in our situation. Okay, well, the discussion has been good and a lot of back and forth. But it's, we're back to the beginning, basically, that I'm required essentially to go through this step and then see where we are after this step.
Yes, I'm sorry we're not speedier.
I can say that last time you didn't say at our expense, you didn't say that we'll arrange it, it was basically, here's G&G contractor, go contact them and figure it out. So honestly, and I didn't feel comfortable with that, to jerk them around and make them come out when I'm not interested in repairing my windows and basically to use them.
Sure.
And so
And that's exactly the reason why we put the process together, because we wanted to be more user-friendly. We didn't want the applicant to feel that they were having to solicit somebody to see if it could be repaired. That's the exact reason why, like you said, it was a red flag. We finally said, you know what, if we're going to ask our applicants to have an evaluation, then we need to take it upon ourselves to formulate a nice list that we vetted ourselves, our members vetted, so that we can provide the applicant with what we're asking them to do, an evaluator. So that's where that came up. So yes, at the time that this was happening, that just sealed the nail in the coffin. We're like, all right, we've got to do something here, because we don't have people that can repair at a reasonable time, and we don't have people that are independent evaluators. So that's where you're coming from.
You mentioned you have a new list of
Mhm.
people that offer this expertise to
Yes.
evaluate. Number one, you have that list available that we can look at. And number two, is there anyone on that list, an evaluator, who also offers the services of repairing those?
No, we
No.
specifically made sure that the evaluators did not have a conflict of interest.
Yeah, I would
Well,
like
they're-
to evaluate.
yeah.
those
They are-
as well.
They are qualified to repair windows, otherwise they would not be qualified to evaluate.
But that's not, but we
They are
have two separate
qualified
lists.
to make window repairs, but they are not. Now, on that evaluator list, there's one architect who does not repair windows, but has worked on historic preservation projects, in my knowledge, for probably 20 to 25 years. There's one individual who, whose business is window repair, but he does not work on windows that are modern windows, and he's busy, and he's older, he's interested in retiring, he's not interested in taking on whole house window restoration projects. And one of the evaluators who I would not suggest for this modern window application is an individual whose favorite way to restore windows is to get all the pieces in a box and then puts them physically. I mean, he'll have all the rails and all the stiles. If he's lucky, he'll have some old glass to go in the windows. That's the kind of repair he wants to do. And he will always look at windows realistically, but his experience is more on very old historic windows, not modern windows. So,
Okay, so let's get back to this application, because, you know, we have with this, and we've got time issues. So from the applicant, what we're asking is, and again, because we can't make you do anything without you having some, I mean, we just can't, this is our recommendation in order for us to follow and be
this is
consistent.
going to be a requirement, I believe,
A requirement, right,
not a recommendation.
about from our board, it's a requirement. It's a requirement that we are asking to allow an evaluator that we have formulated a list on, and you can pick the evaluator that you want from our list,
Or we'll pick one.
or you can, well,
I want to be clear, this is our value.
right, this, right.
It's our value.
Oh, yes.
The other thing I want to clarify is that
There are two architects on the evaluator list.
Yeah, if you could, I'm sure, I'm sensitive to time too, and I have a 1 o'clock medical appointment, so I have to run, but fine, good discussion. It sounds like there's no way forward other than this, so this is clear, this is what I need to do, so I need to reach out to somebody, or how will the
I
process
think-
work?
well, we will find, I mean, obviously, if you want input on which expert is used, I mean, you're certainly welcome to have the input. But if you just say, okay, you made this requirement,
Just send along somebody and organize it.
and, okay, I understand, I'll make my house available, just have your guy call me, and we'll get him in there. So the ball is in our court, if you want.
Yeah, if the person wants to call me, that's fine. I am interested, what was it, 37 Jefferson?
37 East Jefferson.
So I am interested in that. I mean, anyway, I think that if that's a post-war home and they were allowed, I understand there's probably fine-grained differences between that situation and my situation, but I am interested in that precedent and learning more about
Okay.
how that went and how that decision went. So, but anyway, yeah, I mean, if the evaluators want to reach out to me, my home is, you came to my house, people can come to my house and look over things. I'll be very nice to them. It's no problem.
Okay,
Yeah,
So
All right, so
I would suggest that we will be on a dual track here.
sure.
We'll look at the minutes for 37 East Jefferson, but at the same time, we'll get the
evaluator.
evaluator out there and we'll have a path forward.
Okay,
Okay, okay.
agreed.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
being patient with us. I know it's very frustrating. I understand.
I don't feel frustrated. I feel it's a process, but it's a difficult process,
Yeah.
but it's a process.
Okay,
So,
well, thank
so
you.
far.
Thank you. I
Okay,
appreciate
thank
it.
you. All
Okay.
right.
All right, anything on the list or no?
He's gonna have us provide him with,
He asked for the list.
Oh.
Just so you know, they're not finalized.
they're not finalizing what
Why are
way.
they not finalized?
What do you mean not
We
finalized?
never finalized these lists.
Who's we?
The board.
You never voted on it?
Yes.
Okay, well, we could do that today then. Okay,
Well, let's look.
okay, here, there's
Not
that
coming up
sheet.
with a different
That's
one.
why. there's
So we'll
still
vote on
have
that
the draft on them.
Okay,
Sorry. My fingers are cold and they don't work.
okay,
very well.
thank you. All
All
right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
day. Yeah.
So then we should probably vote on that list, right?
I make a motion that we approve the list of evaluators and repair contractors that has previously been reviewed by the full board.
I second.
Okay, member Morrow,
Yes.
member Searle,
Yes,
Mr. Christenko.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, so what happened with our 57 people?
So I spoke to the homeowner, Roger Wall. It is his understanding that pursuant to the last meeting, the board asked that the casement window that was installed on the porch be removed and replaced with solid glass. So he said that he's going to move forward with doing that. He's not sure why he would need to meet again, if that's the only thing that was brought up.
The meeting was about the paint.
yes, they have a stop work order on paint.
Yeah, there's a stop work order and as Mr. Gaetano was here last time, we discussed the fact that we need to have this meeting to talk about the painted stucco.
Right, there's no stop work order issue on that house though.
You said there was.
I thought there was. I thought we stopped work on that paint
No,
because there was.
they asked of him to stop the painting, but that was all, and he agreed to do it based on talking to the board.
Okay, and that's the reason why we were satisfied, because there was that the board was satisfied because he agreed to stop the work.
Correct.
So moving forward now, has he asked to continue the work, or what have you experienced? What's the dialogue between you and the homeowner?
I've only talked to the homeowner once. All right, now, I've been talking to Gaetano or Paul Morbido through it all.
What's that dialogue feel like?
Pardon?
What does that dialogue reveal?
What is the discussion you're having with the architect and Mr. Gaetano? What has that discussion entailed? Recently, has there been anything since you come back from vacation?
No, they just want to know what the status was and then I get told that it was up to me whether the board has reviewed. So I guess I don't understand that because I don't know where in my charge would say where you have jurisdiction. If you're gonna ask me particularly if you have jurisdiction over the painting, I would say no.
Okay, so that's kind of where I thought we were leaving it. That's why I wanted Steve to be here, so he had an understanding of, first of all, the code and the law, and second of all, the materials concept that we're struggling with.
Well, I want to get back to an issue that came up in that meeting with Gaetano Abbey.
So Steve, you want to come up, or you want to sit there? It's up to you.
It's my recollection, and board members, please correct me if I'm wrong. I understood Mr. Abbott to say that the plaster had been removed from the interior of the exterior walls.
Wait, are we talking about the porch?
No,
We're talking about
we're
the.
talking about,
I thought the porch was over.
yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're not talking- This was about the paint.
This is a different, I'm just,
Okay, I want to have.
I'm not stopping, you. I just
No, no.
want Lisa asked a question. What's your
Yeah, no,
thought?
it's not the porch. The porch is done.
Okay.
What the contractor said was that all the plaster had been removed on the interior. the stud spaces had been filled with spray-on insulation, and then new drywall had been put up. He additionally stated that the material that was sprayed on that east wall was one that was recommended by the Sherwin-Williams representative, and it represented a significant vapor barrier on the outside of the building. And I have concerns about,
Can I stop you, Jen?
Yes.
Just for Steve's benefit. It was clear that he said it is waterproof paint.
yes,
It's not water resistant. It's
Waterproof.
waterproof paint.
Right.
so my concern is that moisture moving through the wall, air is going to always flow, and moisture is in the air, so moisture will flow through the wall. And at some point in between the inside wall and the outside wall, that moisture can condense and become liquid water. And spray foam insulation is, now first, if it's open celled, it's the worst possible thing you can put in,
No,
because
closed
it
cell.
becomes a sponge. Well, how do you know? You said he didn't do it. You said he didn't do anything.
No, I did not say you didn't do anything. All right, let's not go there. First off, you know, the way you come at me, and I don't care if this recorded, the way you come at me and talk to me is disrespectful. You ask anybody out there in that room when you walked in earlier, I will not put up with that anymore. I don't deserve it.
I don't deserve your dismissal that I have a right to
I didn't
look at the
dismiss you.
drawings.
The way you came at me,
I agree, and I apologize
is a
for that.
little raw.
I agree,
All
and
right.
I
Appreciate it,
apologize
Jim.
for that.
Okay,
I-
But you were very resistive about letting me see these drawings, and it's not the first time. I recognize that the Historic Preservation Board has no jurisdiction over code. However, in this instance, if the materials used represent a danger to the structure of that building, then I'm going to take issue with it.
You're going against another architectural drawing and stamp drawings, which that is his purview and his stamp and his case, not yours, not mine. I don't have any right to, as a building inspector, to
agree.
go against a stamp set of plans.
I agree, but
Unless I find a code violation.
But I also,
You don't have purview on that. You don't. I'm sorry. You tell me if I'm wrong. She does not have purview over what's in those plans as far as the interior of that home.
well, she's not talking about the interior, she's talking about the,
talking about a threat to the exterior
Right.
walls.
she's talking about a threat to the original stucco facade of that
I-
building.
I'm talking about studs and everything
Well, you're
else.
also talking about an architect, Paul Morabito, who's been involved in historic preservation, restoration
Right?
for
And I understand that,
30-something years.
but I think that the fact of the stucco exterior has to be treated differently in order for it to, because it can crumble, correct? If it's not,
But
if it's not-
see, and that stucco is applied already over a clapboard siding too, so you're talking a completely different situation than a
stucco's-
normal
Hold
plaster.
on. We're talking about the situation as it presently exists. The situation, as I understand it, as it presently exists, is that we had a house that underwent a massive change in style 80, whatever years ago.
I don't-
1925, I believe,
Right.
something like that.
So 80
25.
years ago.
Close to 100 years.
yes,
So that is now the house we have,
That's right.
okay?
Mhm.
Doesn't matter what's under it. I mean, it just matters that it's the house we have. I believe if there's a combination of remodeling, modification to this house, which puts the actual siding material in jeopardy. This board has only, I mean, obviously you get to say it, but it seems to me that we're setting up that siding to fail. That it's, that everything I've read, and which is not very much, mind you, just the two preservation briefs. What I have read indicates that you do not, in rare circumstances, on exterior stucco. And if what this architect has designed is going to cause serious problems in the future for that stucco, I think in the time machine, but you can reliably predict what's going to happen. Then I believe that you, no matter what,
I believe then we need an outside expert to do that, not anybody on this board that has a vested interest in this
okay,
board.
so we started down that road, Steve, because
Yeah.
we started down that road with the preservation group, and which is very clear to me.
Did
Okay.
you get that written material, Steve? The information?
Pardon?
Did you get the written material from the preservation?
I haven't had
briefing?
time.
No, that's
you know, I
okay.
mean,
Oh, that's okay. That's all right.
yeah,
All right. So,
I was
so
looking to
that's,
get through all the minutes.
yeah, no
and
problem.
everything
So
before.
that's kind of what we did. So Ginny was able to pull from the preservation, the specifics about exactly what we're talking about. Because, you know, we didn't know, and I don't blame you not knowing. So we were able to get the actual document that states exactly what we're saying. And we wanted you to take a look at it
Yep.
to see if you felt
In fact,
if
I
you
didn't
understood
have-
where we're
I
coming
didn't
from.
have
All right,
prior to this.
all right, so that's the miscommunication here. So I think if you were able to read that, you might have a different, that's the reason why I wanted to hear, because I think that there's information that you don't have, that we wanted to give you, so that you can look at it, and then you can make your decision.
The problem is, part of the problem is now they've already painted the front of the
And we
house.
understand that.
So what do we do at this point? Because
We
it's
don't know what to do yet.
So
Right.
what our thoughts are, I mean, we don't know what to do, because we haven't gotten that far yet, but our thoughts are, is being, okay.
Let me, yeah, she's absolutely right. I'm sorry. go
That's
finish,
great.
'cause
So
I-
I'll do this really quick. Being very simplistic. This is just a simplistic, quick thing that we've thrown out. If you look at it very organically, they've destructed that piece of the house. The rest of the house, 2/3 of it, has not been destructed yet. So looking from a preservationist, we want to keep the one that has not been touched yet as is. So what do we do with the one that's been touched? Well, obviously, we've got to match it because it's already been destroyed by the paint anyways. We've got to match it to the original house. So we have a paint expert match the original stucco color and paint over it. That's one option. We haven't.
Suggestion, you know, I mean,
It's a
it's
suggestion,
really
correct.
up to the homeowner too, because
But-
now he
right.
wants to proceed.
Right, but we've got to make
Hold on.
sure that they,
Pardon?
Not if we have jurisdiction.
not if we have jurisdiction that they can't paint anymore. Because again, that's where we are right now. We're trying to figure out, do we have jurisdiction over them continuing this paint job
No.
or not?
Okay, so let me just read the code.
Okay.
Every owner or person in charge of a structure in the village shall keep in good repair all the exterior and interior portions thereof, which if not so maintained, may cause or tend to cause the exterior portions of such improvement to deteriorate. That's in the affirmative maintenance repair section of our code. It's 112.9, subparagraph C. And my understanding is that if this paint is to go forward as they propose, then that's going to pose.
So what about every other house in the stucco house that's painted in the village?
I don't know.
It's not-
because-
Probably not painted with waterproof paint.
But
Well,
even-
isn't all paint waterproof?
No,
I mean, technically, you paint a roof or paint a
Yes.
wall to protect it
Jim,
from
hold
the
on.
elements.
Let me speak to
Yep,
Steve's point.
yep.
then you
yep, go ahead.
No, just because there are 5 other houses that are painted with stucco, or with stucco that has been painted. That doesn't mean that this board turns its back on a possible problem for the exterior feature of this house. I mean, I don't think it does. And I would suggest that you're absolutely right, that this board needs to get an expert opinion to provide it to it And the village is gonna have to put the bill on this, right? To it and to the applicant.
Yeah, because if you painted the house with an oil based paint, that's waterproof.
I mean.
I painted for 45 years,
Okay,
you know what I mean? So I know a
Okay,
little bit about exteriors too.
and I have specified materials for exteriors and for historic buildings for 25 years. So let me just state for the record here. I've looked at these drawings. Thank you for letting me see them. There's no mention of paint on these.
No, no.
Paint selection was left to the contractor. The contractor contacted Sherwin-Williams, that's the name,
They
the
gave us, yeah.
manufacturer he gave us. And the manufacturer, the paint manufacturer recommended a product. I have dealt with the Sherwin-Williams reps as well as Benjamin Moore, any number of the paint manufacturers came to our office, gave presentations, we've specified paints, but in general, the guy down at the Sherwin-Williams store has no understanding of the impact of a waterproof coating on historic stucco. They are interested in and most familiar with brand new or otherwise modern construction. So I'm not saying there was any malicious intent.
Right, no, I
I'm
know.
saying they don't
No.
know what they're doing and they don't understand how to treat this house. Now, just you suggested that they did nothing to the interior walls, the interior sides of the exterior walls. Yet their energy compliance details and path table here indicates that the wood frame wall will have an R value of 20 or 13 plus 5, and that relates to thickness of typically batt insulation, 13 plus 5.
Like fill the cavity, that's the
Yes.
law for preservation.
Filling the cavity. But there's no indication of what material is going to be used. So how do you, if you saw it and contrary to what Mr.
Gaetano,
More people.
Gaetano,
well, the
No, no, no.
contractor.
this is what I would call a permit set of drawings.
Mhm.
No detail. A permit set is what architects put together when a project is not going to be bid by multiple contractors. It's just the minimum of information that's required to get a building permit. If as you have recounted, that the interior surfaces of the exterior walls were not removed, how is the insulation installed there and what is it?
Well, no, I knew they'd done work and they re-drywalled in the house and they insulated, yes, obviously. And I thought you were talking about the exterior wall, not the
No,
interior.
no. I'm talking about, did they, because Mr. Gaetano said they took all the plaster and
Yeah, they
linoleum,
flooded the house.
they put spray foam in and then they put drywall back up.
Mhm.
Okay, that's what he told us.
Yeah,
And I will, I'm happy to do a little research and provide information to the board members and Jeff as well, and to you, Steve, also, about issues around spray foam insulation.
Okay, well, we could do that separately.
Okay.
Let me
That's a
just,
separate thing.
let's just talk about where we are right now. So my understanding, you could help us with this, is that right now, we have, well, Steve has to decide whether we have jurisdiction over this external paint. That's where we are right now. The reason why I called you here is because, like I said, I think at the last meeting when you couldn't be here, Ginny and some other people provide us with information as to why we thought we should have precedence, but you weren't here. So I wanted you to have that full understanding and then make your decision as to
yeah, I'm not
whether.
ready to make a decision.
Yeah, and I agree. So I want you to make sure that you understand why we felt strongly that we should, based on the fact that it's a materials quote change or materials issue. And we want to make sure that you are well knowledged before you decide whether we have jurisdiction or not, because it's going to be your call. Is that correct, Jeff?
That is correct.
It's going to be your call. But, and, you know, we will respect what you say, but we want to make sure that you have the knowledge base before you make your decision, okay?
Yeah.
So as far as his ability or his knowledge base, Ginny sent out 2 documents. Are these two of them? So we'll give you these,
They're the preservation briefs.
and then you
Published
heard,
by the National Park Service.
yeah,
And
and then
they
you
are
heard,
the absolute be all end all for,
and then you heard the
Preservation.
code that Jeff read, right? You heard that?
Hmm.
And it's the code that Jeff
Yeah.
read as to why we think we do. And that's the code. I don't know if you want to write that down, if you want to look it up yourself. But those 3 pieces of information, I think, and you guys make sure that I are going to give you the information that we want you to have before you decide,
Right.
okay? Have
Yeah,
that down.
like I said, I wasn't ready. I mean, I got.
No,
I
yeah,
got-
we knew that, we knew
I'm
that.
like, holy crap.
No, we knew that.
I'm in noon, I gotta make a
Totally.
choice. It's like,
I mean, ideally, I wanted to have the homeowner there as well, because I want them to understand where we're coming from, because
Right.
most people don't. So we wanted to have you understand, and we wanted the homeowner to understand before we move forward, because I felt
Right.
intrigued when, you know,
Yeah.
after Ginny gave me all that discussion, and I wanted people to be educated before they made a decision.
Just to short circuit your reading. You can read the whole, obviously, read the whole thing if you want. But if you look at preservation brief number 1, and you go to page 15.
Is that in his packet?
yes,
Go
I
to
gave
page
him-
15,
Here, Jeff,
it says, in most instances, waterproof coating should not be applied to historic masonry. It's the last written paragraph on page 15.
if you could ask Mr. Gaetano for a photograph of the paint can or the
right. what it is.
MSDS
Yeah,
sheet
the
or
material.
the data
breakdown
information
of it.
sheet for it. And get that in the office.
And you are right about it, true win. You could get somebody who's been there for 20
Right,
years, you
right.
get some kid who's been there
Correct,
for 40.
correct.
Yeah. And even
Okay,
the guy that's been there for 20 years, if he's not working
You said page 15?
Yeah.
in
I
historical.
only got
studies.
1 through 11 and 1 through 12.
did you get both packets? Here, so do you have that one?
Oh.
That's one.
That may be, what I printed out may be a newer edition.
Oh, okay, well, I gave you that one. I don't know what that one's.
Yeah, no, this one's got the full.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, so I see 2 legal issues, Steve.
Pardon?
I see 2 legal issues. The first is, generally speaking, does this board have jurisdiction of paint applied to stucco?
to historic stucco surface.
Okay, that's number
See,
1.
that's the hard thing, because we don't have jurisdiction on paint, so
Well,
where do we find whether you do on certain things?
We don't have jurisdiction of paint color. We have very often said, I mean, look, for instance, if somebody pine wood trim on a house, not whatever, we would say, and you gotta paint it, because you gotta protect the property, right?
You gotta cover it. Yeah,
Right, you gotta cover it. So the question is, and that's a better way to say it, really, the question is whether or not covering historic stucco is appropriate or inappropriate. And frankly, as I said, I sent you an email, I think I sent everybody an email, really though, to asking Jenny whether it looked to me like there was a throwaway line, and I'm not sure which historic preservation brief, maybe it's the second one, that seemed to indicate that it was sort of a maybe item, that sometimes stucco was painted. And if that's the case, I'm not certain we have jurisdiction.
But again, we're going on the basis, though, is not so much the paint and the color, it's what we're calling a materials change or the appropriateness of preserving a material. How's that sound?
So
That's where we're going.
I believe
Is
that
this
we
an
don't
appropriate
have-
way to keep the preservation of historic stucco? That's where we're going. It's not about the paint or the color, well, the paint tech, if it's not
I
appropriate paint, it
don't
is.
believe we have a great answer to that question on what I read.
Right.
Okay?
No, I agree, and I have seen stucco painted many times.
So, the question on that is still, if we think there's more we should learn,
Well, when I've seen stucco painted, I don't always know if it's in a preservation district.
But again, let's get back to.
It's not in the preservation.
Let's get back to what's in front of us. We can't help what happened
Right.
20 years ago, okay?
So-
We don't know
so
what it
I was-
was, we don't, but that's not what we base our decisions on. Remember, we do not base our decisions on what happened 20 years ago. We are right now, we've got this house in front of us. This is the issue that we're dealing with. And this is what I want to focus on. So don't look at all those other ones that,
Issue one is
Okay.
still, Jenny, do you think there is more to be learned other than these historic or these preservation briefs on the application of paint to stucco?
I will do some research.
Okay, all right, so that's still open, okay? Secondly, the second issue I see is if we know an application, for instance, using, you must cover the bare wood. If we know an application is going to lead inevitably to the deterioration of an architectural feature, exterior architectural feature, do we have jurisdiction
Right.
of
Right.
that issue?
But like I said, then you need to look at it as like some sort of separate expert in order to get opinion.
Right, but first of all,
Because
Steve,
in theory, waterproof coatings usually do not cause problems, or they exclude all water from masonry.
but look at the last paragraph.
But they're both in here.
right.
They are
Right.
both.
So
in
you need
here.
to look at it and you make your decision.
Yeah.
That's
So
where.
I
it is.
mean-
we're not gonna use an expert.
You know, I don't know
Unless-
I don't know who we contact.
Listen, and we're not gonna use an expert, let's wait, hold on, until you look through that information and you feel either uncomfortable with making a decision, comfortable with making a decision, or you feel that we need to take this further. That's really that's what you need to let us know,
Right.
okay?
Yeah, and I'm gonna take my time with it, just like I did,
It's
like
okay.
with the brewery. I'm
Take
not,
your time,
I'm
because this
not
is-
gonna make any jump decision.
Right, because
because
this is your decision,
There's too many.
I know,
And Jenny, if there's more,
that you think
It would be
provide,
important for me to know what paint was put on there.
okay, well, he's
hold on,
gonna try to get that
no,
picture.
I'm operating from the supposition that it is waterproof paint.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, I wanna find out the material that they put on,
But-
and find out what it is and what it's meant for. Is
Okay.
it, you know, what I mean, let's find out what they're doing, so you can make an opinion on if it's proper or not
So
first.
let me just ask you this, Jenny, if it's not waterproof, it's just water resistant paint, does that make a difference in your
Depends on the
view?
permeability.
Okay.
Moisture
So-
permeability.
so the two things, Jenny, that we might need your help on is additional research on the efficacy of paint applied to stucco, just generally.
Yep.
And secondly,
Do you mean efficacy or do you mean appropriateness?
appropriateness, yes, that's a better word, appropriateness of paint applied to stucco on a historic structure. And secondly is the waterproofness of paint on stucco, given the circumstances that we think that there has been insulation placed against the exterior wall and then enclosed with wallboard, with drywall. And what, so it appears in the preservation brief that Steve is reading contradictory information.
Well,
Right.
again, there's times that you.
If there is something that we can give Steve that will be non-contradictory,
Okay.
that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to see him do something that in 10 years is gonna compromise the finish on the house. or the
Right, and that's what we're
Well-
concerned is.
Yeah,
I can give you a small case in point, somewhat beyond what's happened here. The house I lived in, 42 Lincoln Avenue. My husband lived there with a bunch of guys. We got married, they had just split. And
Well, that was mean.
and he had a humidifier, because his mother thought you needed to have a humidifier. He had to have a humidifier in the house. And he had it pushed right up against an exterior wall. And I said, dear, you need to turn that off. It's not good for the house. It's not good for the stucco. And he said, I'm doing it anyway. And after about 2 or 3 years, a piece of stucco, the exact dimension of the humidifier, was blown right off the outside wall. from moisture going through it. And that house was painted. It was painted with oil paint for many years. I remember, because I had a friend that lived in that house when I was in elementary school, and I went to that house. It was painted, always, in my 71 years. It's always been painted. I don't know if it was painted when it was built in 1925 or not.
Right.
But
So,
there was,
so our concern is that it goes way beyond just the paint itself. It goes beyond the integrity of the architecture of the home. That's where we're going.
well, my point is, even with multiple layers of oil paint, which are, when there are multiple layers, yes, it does become a vapor retarder on the inside. But even with that, with something that's more permeable than a waterproof paint, the stucco was blasted right off the side of the house from moisture migrating through. And in a case like this, in the whole house, the moisture is always going to migrate
Gotta
through.
find
Okay.
somewhere.
And
Yeah.
at some point in time,
All right, Jeff, do you have anything? Because I need to close the meeting, guys.
Yes, so Steve, I'm reading that paragraph that you pointed to. In theory, waterproof coatings usually do not cause problems as long as they exclude all water from masonry.
Mhm.
If water does enter the wall from the ground or from the inside of a building, the coating can intensify the damage because the water will not be able to escape.
Okay,
Right.
yeah.
So I think we're reading these are not contradictory paragraphs. So, I mean, without more, it looks like if you put waterproof painting, you might be heading towards a problem. I mean, that's how
Depends on
I.
how good a job, you know, what I mean, if they don't do a great job, they can get water infiltration and cause worse problems.
Well, they don't, maybe I'm wrong, but don't they have to put a moisture barrier on the inside, Jenny, for that to be true?
Full cell foam is a moisture barrier.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna make a
I
motion,
move that,
making a motion to end the meeting. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, member Morrow,
Yes.
member Searle,
Yes,
and Chairperson.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming.
I'm not gonna jump at this, you know what I mean?
No, I know, but that's what we're waiting for your decision, okay?
Yeah.
As long as
The homeowner knows
they
that.
know not to
Yeah.
paint anymore. I think
Yeah,
that's fine.
they're not touching it.
Okay.